Hello, everybody. This is Joshua-Hatton with One Nation Under Whiskey. I'm joined today, and as always, by my good partner, my good friend,
my business friend, my good partner,
friend,
the walker who is white.
Jason Neil Patrick. Jason Neil Patrick Harris Johnson Yellen, and this is 3 weeks in a row where we have Jessica Neil Patrick Harris Rabbit Guillermo Lomas with us. Hey, listen, I'm going to screw up Jason. I'm going to screw up Jessica as well. This is
that's fine. We'll just keep adding names until there are no other possible combinations of names to be had. There'll be a whole podcast of you just saying my name. Well, that was great, listeners. See you again next time.
They said it couldn't be done. Joshua rose to the challenge.
Jason, I love how just before we recorded, you were talking about how sleepy you were, and you started resting your head on the little cushion of your microphone.
So comfy. So comfy.
Just last night, for the first time, I think ever, somehow I got Haida to join me in sharing a Bourbon County Stout beer.
Oh gosh.
Yeah.
Oh gosh. Yep. Higher ABV than the normal little sippers that we do.
Right. 14.6. It was the 2023.
I'll have a pint, please.
Yeah. Sign me up.
And so we split that, and this was at like 5:30, maybe 6 o'clock, something like that. Right. And like you combine that with the fact that we've fallen back, with the clock.
Indeed.
And so now the sun is setting earlier, and yeah, we were both just shutting our eyes, just falling asleep in our chairs. And I just like you, just falling asleep. So
put the head down, close the eyes.
Those beers don't get you drunk. I think they're more like NyQuil than they are anything. Like
that's so tasty though.
Yeah, in my advanced decades here, the thing I say about those higher cask conditioned ales that come in at the 13s, the 14, the 15, gosh, I think some of them are 18% alcohol. I feel the hangover while I'm drinking them. Like they are headache inducing, and I steer away from them now. I am a very delicate flower, and I would much rather have a wee low ABV session ale. Just a wee one of those.
Coming out this man's mouth. He's the one who readily ridicules me for not liking 60% whiskies. But here he has been like, oh, just a wee 3% beer. Yes, please. Like the three of us drink cask strength whiskies, and here you are being like 14% beer. Oh my goodness, dangerous juice. Like no, it's just not.
It breaks me, Jess.
In quantities.
Yeah. I think the sugars manifest in a different way.
A lot of sugar, right? A lot of sugar in those beers.
Yeah. You'll learn this once you get into your advanced decades, Jess. You're such a young woman about town at these moments. You don't want to know what lies ahead. I have a lovely group of
friends who call this category of beer, they call them breakfast beers, breakfast stouts.
Okay. We're not
anything
in
under 10% is for wusses.
Those are 90-night stouts.
Going back to bed beers.
Yeah, just like you don't need sleepy time tea anymore. You just drink one of these beers and you're good to go.
Bourbon cask ale.
The specific beer that you're talking about, actually, that is the edition of VDC that I brought back from the old US of A. In their beer casks is the Bourbon County Stout finished cask.
Yeah, that was cracking as well.
Cask Inception. It's delicious. I'm thrilled to bring it back. In fact, my plan is to get myself some of these low ABV beers and have a few of them with whiskey with a bunch of friends. Yeah, these breakfast beers.
Sounds like a good time. Yeah, the gingerbread stout for this year. There's going to be an extra coming up with Josh and I tasting that one. Mm-hmm. That was really, yeah. Take two, batch 2 of that. Second annual release. Yeah, really, really delicious. Mm-hmm. Well, I will tell you, since we've brought up VDC organically here, I will tell you that last Sunday, November 9, was the 10th anniversary shindig at VDC. Oh, wow. And I got to go down there with Tamara. We were hanging out with Amanda and Brian and Brian's partner. Ownership were on site, friends of ownership. They're Courage supporters. Their cask Courage supporters were there. It was really, really great. Beautiful afternoon, beautiful fall afternoon down in Livingston. And tasted a few things along the way. Really wonderful celebratory atmosphere for 10 years of VDC. Oh, saw Dustin. How can I leave Dustin out of this? Saw Dustin's partner. So, really, really cracking, really good group, really passionate group, and being involved in that celebration. Yeah, it stands for everything we value around these parts. So, congrats to them. That was wonderful, wonderful gathering. Yeah,
10 years. Wow, it's amazing you could throw numbers out there like that. Right. Listen, there's lots to be talking about. You know, Jess, I want to talk with you about Glasgow's Whiskey Fest, which you just came off of. But I think maybe we should talk about that after the interview that we're about to introduce here, which, you know, you had a lovely conversation with our good friend Matthew at Good Spirits Company here. I thought maybe you could introduce this interview. I've got a good story about Good Spirits Company that I want to share afterwards. Maybe afterwards.
Oh, okay.
Let's see how it goes. But yeah,
I think I was trying to think how long I've really known Matthew, and I've known Good Spirits since their inception, but I've got vague memories of Matthew in a previous life in the pot still. So that's kind of the era just as I was arriving to Glasgow. But he was delighted to come and have a chitty-chatter with me. It's the start of something I want to do a little bit more of. Now that I've managed 3 episodes in a row of this podcast, I am slowly taking over one episode at a time. And there's a whole bunch of people that I want to chat to, but I thought it was a really fun idea to start with somebody who's 5 minutes from my office in Glasgow.
Yeah, right.
And to head over and have Matthew chat. He has admitted to me that he listens to all podcasts, not just ours, but all podcasts on 2.5 times speed, the thought of which makes my ears itch. He did try to play me a podcast at 2.5 times speed, and I think you need to be on the breakfast stouts to deal with that, if I'm honest with you. It's too fast for me. We had a chit-chat and a ramble through all sorts of things, Glasgow and whiskey, as you're going to hear, and I decided to adopt a little kind of roundup to the interview, which I'm going to use elsewhere, 5 quick questions that I thought would be a fun thing to put to people. Instead of Jason's famously philosophical way of getting us out of here, I thought I'd give an incomplete Joshua-Hatton-list of, and another thing that I've just thought of. It was great fun to chat to him. It's always fun to chat to people about whiskey, and we've got a bit of a shared background because I also did some retailing a long time ago. So it's really fun to kind of reminisce on those days, as you will hear. So I don't think I need to waffle too much into this intro. I think we should just jump on in and listen to me and Matthew chatting in the office. Hello, podcast listeners. You'll be excited to hear a change of voice because I, the third J, have stolen the podcast once again. So, hello from Glasgow. This is Jess speaking, and today I have a special guest with me. I am here today with Matthew, who I will let him introduce himself in a second, but we're here to talk about the Good Spirits Company and Glasgow and all things whiskey. So, hello, Matthew.
Hello, Jess.
Could you give us your fullest Sunday title and what your connection to Good Spirits Company is?
Right. So my full name is Matthew Robert McFadyen. That's only one middle name, sadly. It's
that's
not
down
enough.
on the average for this podcast.
I feel like I'm letting the team down. I should really just add some random names in.
I'd have let you add 3 or 4 of your own choosing.
I know, I should have prepped for this. I feel like I've let everyone down. Anyway, I'm one of the owners of the Good Spirits Company. So I set up the business with Shane and an ex-colleague called Mark back in 2011. So that was a long time ago.
That's a frighteningly long time ago.
It is. My children were small then. Now they are no longer small. It's really quite terrifying.
I think we were... that's the kind of era that when I see it written down, I assume it was only 2, maybe 3, 5 years ago at a push. It is pre-COVID, so I'm going to say it's 5 years ago. And when I look at whiskey, especially if I'm looking at our casks, and then I look at the next column on our spreadsheet of doom and it says ages that are in double digits, I always assume there's something wrong with the spreadsheet. That's quite frightening.
It is frightening. I think it is a frighteningly long time ago. And now we have 3 shops in Glasgow. So we have the main shop, the Bath Street shop, the original, the OG. The OG, which is kind of where I mostly base myself from. And that's where we've got our tasting room. It's the biggest space. It's just a lovely big space, although it is in a basement, so it can be tricky to find. And then we've got another wee shop round the corner, which we opened about, just over 10 years ago.
Really?
Uh-huh.
Well, that's a surprise to me. I'd have said 3, but carry on.
Yeah, no. We just celebrated our 10th birthday last year with a 10% Imperial Stout that we matured in a cognac cask that we use. We've bottled the cognac from. And then about 9 years ago, we took over a shop in the West End. It was an old Peckham's unit. It was called Peckham's and Rye. It was like when I was young, I remember when I first moved to Glasgow and I was living down the road and my dad turned 50, which is slightly terrifying because I'm 49 now. But he was turning 50 and I went down and bought 50 different beers for his birthday.
Nice. From
the Peckham's. And it cost me a small fortune.
Yeah, it will have done.
Yes. And no discount, obviously. I thought I was very proud of myself. And I was slightly sad that 7 or 8 years later, when I was up visiting my dad, that he still had some of them because he was too scared that they were too strong for him to drink.
I guess if you've gone for 50 beers, they're not all going to be your kind of everyday drinking strength. There's going to be a nice handful in there that are sharing beers, maybe.
Yeah, I think there was several Trappist-style beers, so 11, 12%. So he was quite terrified of those. And I forgot that, here's me living in metropolitan Glasgow and my dad living in the deepest, darkest Highlands. Probably not used to these things at all.
Yeah, possibly not. Although I know enough people that live in the Highlands that can also tell you some really frightening stories about homebrew and homemade spirits that are from a shed. So I'm not fully signed up to the idea that the people of the Highlands are shy of high strength drinks.
Yeah, well, my dad is not one of those. I'll tell you that. Let's just say that.
Okay, so I think we should also maybe start with a little bit because unbelievably to me, there are some people listening to this podcast who are not in Glasgow, which seems wild to me.
Okay.
Because you know that we're in the centre of the universe here. If you have never come across Good Spirits, how would we explain it to the listeners?
Oh, right. So the plan was, I suppose, when we first started discussing the shop, we had all these ideas about what the shop ought to be. And I think we wanted to do a kind of whiskey shop. That was our idea. We wanted to sell whiskey. But in my previous life, before Good Spirits, I worked for a chain called Oddbins, and Oddbins were a kind of medium-sized quality off-sales chain in the UK. They regularly won best off-sales in the UK many, many years in a row. And I eventually was running the main city centre store, which was the main whisky store for the company in Glasgow, second busiest in the company. It was the main champagne store in Scotland. We sold a lot of spirits. That was kind of the predominant thing we did. So I had this idea in my head that there was an opportunity there, and And at the time, I suppose, we were working for Oddmans, we kind of felt that the supermarkets were dominating the kind of wine trade. So we thought, let's open a shop that avoids all that. Let's do the spirits. We also were aware of the kind of growth of new kind of cocktail bars. And we were going into bars and seeing all these amazing rums and gins and all these different brands that we had no clue where you'd find those in a retail setting. So that was basically why we started. And big focus on whiskey, but also let's have 30 or 40 rums. Let's have 20 or 30 gins. Let's have some more than 3 tequilas. Let's have a range of liqueurs for making cocktails. Let's have a range of vermouths. And that has now grown, where we've got probably, any one time 300-400 different whiskies. We've got a good range of American whiskey. We've got some world whiskey. We've got quite a lot of gin, although the gin has shrunk from maybe 180 lines to maybe only 90 now.
That seems insane to me, because when I worked in retail, the idea of there being more than, I would say, 20. I guess maybe when I was working retail here in Glasgow, the gin boom was really starting to take hold, and I feel like we had reps every day of the week coming in with different gins. And yeah, so the fact that you're saying only 90 gins is quite a statement, really.
Yeah. It's amazing how things have kind of turned. Like the volume, we're still selling a lot of gin, but it's just through far fewer lines. I think people have probably found the ones they like, and we're also much more discerning over which ones are the ones we like to have on our shelves, because they're the ones we would like to drink. Because there was I think we were probably less discerning whilst the peak of the boom was going on, and now you have to be much more discerning about what you're buying. Plus rum, when we opened, I think, with gin, we opened with about 20 gins. Now we've got far more than that. And with rum, we opened with maybe 20, 30 rums. And now we've got maybe 120 rums.
Yeah.
So lots of fun to be had. But our main focus is whiskey. And I think the thing that drew us to the unit that we're in, the Bath Street unit, was that it was so big. And that allows us to have a tasting room out the back where we do lots of events and things. Lots
of events. You guys are really busy in that space at the back. It also has, and I'm going to put a picture of it up on the old socials. It's got a very famous wall which has kind of become a legendary collection of who's who of the industry with signatures on it. Which I think that started with Ralphie, and I think I was in the tasting where he just took a Sharpie and in the moment wrote on your wall, and that felt very, I don't know, rebellious. Whereas now I think it's like a sign of you were here to have everybody's signatures. And there's lots of people who have moved around these, as they've moved between companies or come back, they've signed next to it like back again, or it's quite a fun thing to look at.
Yeah, I love it because it is a visual history of the shop.
Yeah.
We opened in 2011 and Ralphie filled that first brick in 2013.
I know exactly the date it was. I don't know why I know. It was and I'm not American, but it's a 9/11.
Oofed.
It was a tasting that Ralphie did that I went to, and I got taken along because the lineup of what was the tasting looked pretty good, but he was doing it as a charity event for the Joey Dunlop Foundation.
Ah, of course. And that was probably just before Glasgow Whisky Festival?
Yeah, I guess. Well, it would have been it's September, isn't it? So a couple of months before. September. But he had he'd done a bottling for the Joey Dunlop Foundation. He had, the thing that drew me in was there was a brewer. There was a little brewer hanging out in there, and that was almost like a throw-in at the end of the tasting of it. Oh, and I've got a brewer. Yeah, it was a very interesting evening, and I was sat on the table with listeners of the podcast will know our beloved Swede Scott and a former colleague of mine, Ian Petrie, and Angus was there, Angus and Johnny from Kythe, who we've also had on the podcast. I don't know why that is so vividly in my memories that day. I'm not really sure. Well, I do kind of know, because that's sort of how I ended up in a totally different area of the whiskey industry based off that one evening. But it was a great tasting. But yeah, I've had lots of very great tastings. I'm going to be honest, some of the memories after the nights in your basement tasting room are a little bit fuzzy. One of my favourite ones was I don't know why I'm airing myself like this. This is like a confession. I came to a tasting with some friends who, it was a tequila tasting. And I'd locked myself at my house and I'd messaged my mate. It was Friday night. And I knew a locksmith was going to be very expensive for an after-hours call-out. So the plan was I'd go and stay in his house for the weekend and call the locksmith on Monday. And he said, well, I'm going to Good Spirits. I'm going to a tequila tasting. Do you want to come? But, yeah, I'm locked out my house. I'll do anything now. And we were sat on a table with people who, all of them hated tequila, but had bravely decided to sign up for a tequila tasting. And every different one that you guys introduced, they all winced and were like, oh no. Ugh. So my friend and I sort of hoovered up. I don't know how we got up the stairs out of the shop. It's a very steep flight of stairs. Oh. It must be very entertaining for you guys watching people leaving tastings. After responsibly drinking, of course.
I do remember a tequila tasting I hosted, one of the first ones. And before I even had an opportunity to say that tequila's not for slamming, it's for sipping, there was a woman who'd already downed 2 or 3 of them.
Maybe that's a great way of doing a high-speed tasting. They're like, yeah, come in, sit down, 6 shots. Thanks very much. See you again next week.
And I'm like, oh, this could go horribly wrong. But yeah, no, there's lots of fun.
I've really enjoyed the tastings as a space to... And I've been running tasting a long time. I think they're a great place for people to learn about something in a fairly non-threatening level. If you go to a pub, and even with something like whiskey that I'm fairly competent with by now, there's still a risk that you've ordered something that you don't like. But if you go to a tasting, there's a bunch of stuff there for you to try. Everyone's there for a good time. And if you like all the things, brilliant, and there's a nice exit via the gift shop moment. And if you didn't, well, that's fine. You tried some things, someone's tidying the glasses up, we all get to go home. And I think tastings offer a kind of fun, educational format, but in a way that lets you try things. I don't know about you, even now in Glasgow, if I wanted to go and try a bunch of different tequilas, there's not an awful lot of options here. Or even rums. There's one, obviously, fairly famous rum bar on the south side, but there's not many places in which we have in Glasgow, which is a sizable city, opportunities to do that. So you guys are doing the good work with letting us try things that are unusual, and I don't know if I'd go into a bar and order 6 different tequilas. I'm also kind of getting... The point that I'm getting to is you also use the tastings as a way of giving people access to highly sought after things that people will give you their firstborn child for, are willing to queue up overnight. I've walked past the shops. Not so much in the recent years, but I've walked past the shop in previous years and there's been a lot of people, and I've been like, oh, it must be a Springbank day, because there's a lot of people hanging out outside Good Spirits. I love the way that you guys use that as an opportunity to take something which is low-level stock to you to start with, and then how you maximise everyone being able to try it.
Yeah, we often do that if the timing's right. I think, during towards the end of lockdown, and as we were coming out of that, we're allowed to come back to doing tastings and things. Certainly we planned a few tastings around the releases of Springbanks, just so that I think that I know that at the kind of peak of the of whiskey a few years back, 3 or 4 years ago, the flippers were getting quite active, and we were trying to think of ways we could manage that. How could we reduce the stress on the team? How to distribute bottles fairly without upsetting people? And what we've decided to do was do a series of tastings where, we'd open the whiskies, charge people for those, obviously, to come along to the tasting to cover the costs, but then if there was limited edition whiskies, they would be distributed through the tasting. So you had to buy a ticket for the tasting. But if you had bought a ticket for the tasting, then you have a 1 in 30 chance of getting one of the bottles, say. So say we had a case of Springbank 25-year-old, we'd open one, you'd have 5 left to sell at the tasting.
I think that is possibly the fairest way, and I've thought about it a lot over the years, the fairest way of getting whiskey to people in a way that's not... there's no way of making it a tidy, fair way of doing it. Over the years, I've met bunches of people who've come up with other fun, innovative ideas. There is a bar in Seattle called the Doctor's Office that's run by Dr. Matt, and I met him in the Bonaccord here. He was telling me that the way he deals with his pappy allocation is they make Jell-O shots, and they name them after funny, humorous things, but the money that goes from selling these pappy shots go towards, when I met him, I don't know if he always keeps it the same, but appointments for women's health and medically related, giving women access to medical services that maybe are problematic in the US. I've also been to a tasting in London where they just did it as a luck of the draw, and how they dealt with the kind of anti-flipper vibe is they forced you to open the bottle in front of them, and they filmed it while everybody chanted your name. It was an extremely weird experience, but I suppose again then you know that those people are going home with bottles that then technically have no resale value because they are open. I do think you guys are trying to do the fairest thing. I love that you came up with writing haikus. At one point there was something about writing haikus which is, that's really highbrow. It really tests how badly I want a Springbank.
You can tell Roddy was involved with that one. I think, we try, we've made, you always learn from your mistakes. So, trying to do, doing tastings works if the price is okay. If you've got a whole heap of Springbanks that are coming out and the 30-year-old became £1,000 sort of thing, or £900, say, that makes it difficult to open for a tasting. So we stopped doing that with Springbanks, and often we can't time the tastings around the deliveries of these things. Often we'll do that with our Pappy allocation because we'll often get only 3 bottles of 3 different ones. So we'll just use it for a tasting along with the scant bottles of BTEC that we get. But it means that we get to taste them, and that's all we really want, is for everyone to be able to taste them and enjoy them, because that's what it's for. But we, try and do a draw to see who has the opportunity to buy a whiskey. We made the mistake of saying send an email to an address, and we just ended up getting spammed by hundreds and hundreds of people, creating fake email addresses, and it's kind of bot-like activity, and that becomes no fun. People just send an email to, and it was just a blank email, so they hadn't even engaged their brain to say, hi, can you enter me into this competition? And that made us think, right, we need to do other things. So we've said, we tried the haiku thing, which was great, but then we got pushback from people going, oh, but I'm not creative enough, I can't do that. And you're like, that's fair, because yes, it's fun, but it also does make it kind of slightly exclusionary,
But I think it's funny. How could you guys have made that? All right, writing a haiku. I'm not sure I would have been ideal at writing a haiku, but I get what you're trying to do there. And I'm not sure I would have been narked enough to write to you to say, I can't write haikus. I think I would have just been like, that's them trying to be fair. And either you participate and maybe you write a really good haiku, or you say, I don't need to be involved with that. You guys are not the only... I may come as a surprise to you, you're not the only store who get allocations of these things. Go and try your hand at somebody else's store. That's if it's really that painful to you, you guys are trying to do the good talk here, I don't understand, generally I don't understand people who get gnarly with people, but in retail settings, why are you shouting at a person in a shop? They're literally just there trying to help you. It's very unfriendly, and honestly it would make me less inclined to help you in the future. That is just me, not on behalf of Good Spirits. Yeah,
that's fair. I think since then we will often ask people to come up with a quiz, an answer to a question, but we'll also say, if you can't answer the question, send us a picture of something,
Please give me your finest drawing of, and then 3 abstract things.
Yes, or send a picture of your cat, or send a picture of a cat. It doesn't have to be your cat, or so there's at least an element of having to do a little bit of work. And I think that's fine. I think it was for the last 30-year-old Springbank, we asked people to send us things that they've had for 30 years.
You've just made it into a Taskmaster, which I've had several conversations about Whiskey Taskmaster. I think there's a TV show in the making here. We could do that.
Well, we did have something called Castmaster we did in the shop a wee while ago with Roddy and little Alex. He was I
seem to remember having a conversation with Sarah, something to do with, there was a bench pressing and then something about rowing casks around the shop. I can't remember now. It feels like a fever dream, but there was definitely
There was an apple duking thing where you had to try and get an apple out as quickly as possible out of a thing. There was definitely an element of drawing involved. I think there was trying to get a tasting note that matched Roddy's tasting note.
Oh, that's difficult. Yeah. I'm not getting any bottles from that, I don't think.
No, but I think it was chaos, but everyone really enjoyed it.
I think that's part of the fun too, though. And I guess over the years you've seen the stock in the shelves. I often think about the time at which you guys opened. I was still working in whiskey retail, I think about the products that were on the shelf and I have a little weep at the things I should have taken a loan and I should have bought everything and then just been merrily drinking it for the rest of my life. Like a great example, and we mentioned them there, was of the Buffalo Trace, the BTAC series. We had, I mean, it's when we had loads of them in the shop. We had multiples, and I remember the last bottle sat on the shelf for forever. We were taking it down, like dusting it, and then putting it back on the shelf. Because the only people in Aberdeen, where I was at the time, who were buying that were bartenders who knew what these incredibly high-proof bourbons were. But we had a George T. Stag, which sat on the shelf. I think it went on the shelf at £149. I think we reduced it twice. I think it went for under 100, and I'm sure it was either a member of staff who bought it, probably with staff discount, or it was one of the bartenders came in and bought it because they'd watched it kind of carefully just sitting there. Because in mid-2000s Aberdeen, nobody wanted to spend 100 and something pounds on a bottle of that weird American stuff. You know, it was hard enough getting people to buy whiskies at £120. So, like, now I just think, oh, like, I could have made people do haikus. I could have made them draw things. Like, that would have been quite something. I guess you guys know it too. Like, we've talked a bit about the gin and the rum changing on the shelves, but the whiskey will be completely different too.
Oh, so different. You know, when we first opened, you know, we had things like, we had Pappy 20-year-olds sat on the shelf. People would walk past because it was too expensive, like the BTAC, you know, ridiculous things. And that was back in 2011, before everything kind of exploded. But I think our range has probably shifted more towards independent bottlings. We've probably moved a wee bit away from a lot of the kind of big name whiskies, because I think, you know, we've seen over the last few years that maybe the value hasn't been there for a lot of big brands. Yeah. You know, this kind of desperate move in premiumisation of a lot of brands has kind of, doesn't really feel like that's being aimed at the UK market. It's more for an export market. This premiumisation. So a lot of brands that you used to be able to have a whole range of age statements on the shelf, now you might have two, because the 18-year-old is now almost £200, and it's, you know, that makes it more of a stretch for your average drinker. You know, I think part of the thing for us anyway, we're based in Glasgow, and we have to think about as much as we love having tourists in, and we get lots of them, but that's seasonal, I suppose. You know, our shop is aimed at anyone who's into whiskey, but we have to think a lot about our local market, and the local market is definitely doesn't trade up as well as some other markets. You know, I remember speaking to Archie through at Luvians and St Andrews, and his discussions about you know, the things he can sell very easily is very, very different to what we can sell, and that's just because it's a different type of customer there. You know, when you've got a transient community of people coming through who are wealthy golfers.
I guess we've all done it too. You get a bit of kind of holiday brain. You go in a shop and you're like, I need a souvenir of something to take back. And I guess I am not a golfer. I'm guessing if you've done very good at the old golf bats, then you may be in a better mood to spend money on whiskey. That if you're just looking to fill a wee gap you've made on your shelf for the weekend, it's a very different shopping experience.
Yes, absolutely. So, you know, we tailor our range to suit the things that we sell. And I suppose Glasgow itself, as a tourist destination, tends to attract people who might have been to Scotland once or twice before. So if you've only ever been to Scotland once, you'll probably do the big things like Edinburgh, St Andrews, Loch Ness.
Fools. You're missing out. You're missing out on all the best bits.
And then you'll head back on your bus or your cruise or wherever else you're going. And that's fine, but that's quite different to the Glasgow market, which is often people who are travelling through, who are come back, who are maybe doing their West Highland Way to walk up to Fort William, or going out to the islands, or visiting the distilleries. So we tend to get a more kind of engaged and tuned in visitor, if that makes sense. So they kind of know roughly where they're going and or have an idea of what prices should be.
I quite like the idea that it gives you guys an opportunity to give them a much more tailored experience than, you know, oh, welcome, we've got mainstream malts from insert distillery name here, from one from each region, and you should buy the 15-year-old in all of them. Whereas if you walk into your shop, there's a lot more independent bottlers, so there's going to be lots of things people haven't seen. So I sometimes wonder, to me, that attracts me, because I like shiny things. I'm a bit of a magpie, so I'm going to go to the shelf and look. I guess maybe that could be slightly intimidating to people who are just in Scotland and want a bottle of whiskey to take home. But that's where you need staff who are friendly and make the experience pleasurable. So when you walk into the shop, everybody always says hi. You know, it's not somebody appears at your elbow and is like, "What do you want?" It's a very like, if you have questions, let me know, or I'm happy to let you browse. I also want to put in here that you guys are one of the only shops that I know of who have a record player, and that's kind of to do with the history of the shop.
So the shop was, for many, many years, 20, 30, 40 years or whatever, was a record store. So it was very famous, and it's laterally, it was called 23rd Precinct. And if you can go back, I think on Google Maps, if you go back to the street view of the shop, 23 Bath Street, Glasgow, if you go back far enough, you can see how it used to look with its bright yellow outside. It was quite terrifying, and we sit underneath a church hall. So there's a church hall above us, and this record store underneath that used to blast out music quite loudly. Apparently, it was the place you'd go to get all your the latest vinyl for. There's two kind of main kind of alternative clubs in Glasgow that would have been the Arches and the Sub Club, and DJs would play there. The big DJs that would come round internationally would come around and play these venues, and during the day they would often go and play a wee set at 23rd Precinct.
That's really cool.
And I've been told, the guy who used to who owned the shop was a guy called Billy Kilty, and he said that the first Daft Punk white label sold in the UK went through that shop. So that's the sort of thing they were doing. It was right at the kind of cutting edge of the latest music, the latest trends. People would be going in and buying the music. They'd want to hang out there because it was a cool place to go. So when we took over the unit, they'd closed in the December 2009, and we went to see it, I think in April 2010 was the first time we cast eyes over it, and it was a bit of it needed some TLC at that point.
Yeah, the actual shop itself is pretty special looking inside too. I love that you're right, you're down in a basement, so for me that's great because then you're trapped in this nice environment, but it's got a lovely kind of cozy feel to it. It's again, you need to come to Glasgow and see the shop and buy things, obviously. Don't just come and look at the shop, that's weird.
Yeah,
but it's got a lovely kind of feel of wood. There's a lot of kind of like whiskey based references in there. You've got that lovely, the centre bit where the till is it's kind of like encased, is that what we're going to call it, in staves, and it's got like lovely artwork, and the shelves have got references. Is that a deliberate choice? Instead of, some whiskey shops are really sterile, and I think some of that is budget for a fit out is going to be low priority versus getting good stock on the shelves, right? Nobody really thinks, God, they had really nice shelves, if only they'd had better whiskey, so the priority is getting sales. But you definitely had a deliberate look, and I guess that's a long way removed from how it looked as a record shop.
Oh geez, yeah, when we first came to see it, it was slightly terrifying, but when we went to do the refit, we approached someone about doing the shelving. I think we'd met someone at an event who was doing kind of barrel top or like tops of counters for kitchens and things, and he'd come up with this idea of using barrel ends, so breaking up bits of ends of barrels and using them to create this kind of flat surface. And we'd spoken to him about doing the shop fit or doing the shelves and things, and he was like, yeah, that'd be amazing. And I think because he kind of saw it as an opportunity to show off his work as a space, he did offer us a very good price for it, which was great. But yeah, when you look at the counter, which is big, it's pretty long. It's maybe 3 or 4 meters long, 4 or 5 meters. It's a big, long counter.
Decent space.
Yeah, it's a big space. But it's just, you can, when you peel off all the random junk that gets built up on top of a counter, so like miniatures and packs of things, and the record player and the tills and the keyboards and the printers and the staplers and the sellotape and the pens and all that stuff that just gets gumph that get built up. You can see that there's like, you can make out bits of words that would have been at like Porto or Jerez or Sherry, or there's just little, you can pick out little bits and things, so it feels like you're kind of in with it, I suppose. It's lovely, and I think this part of that is the smell, because the floor's oak, the counter's oak, the shelves are oak, or the fascias are oak, I should say, and that just adds to that lovely smell of kind of wood that when you walk in, and that besides that, we've also got a humidor that my colleague, my business partner Shane, his dad built over in Ireland and brought back over here.
Oh yeah, we didn't get to, in our original listings of your things, we didn't get cigars. I would love to, this is really just a public call out to Yoni, who I assume is listening to this, to work out how to get some of our single cask nation cigars into the UK. I feel like whiskey is challenging enough. I think the paperwork for cigars coming into the UK sounds a nightmare, but it would give me a thrill to see our cigars in a humidor as well as our whiskies on the shelf.
Oh yeah, I'm just squirming at the thought of the paperwork.
It's very much a pie in the sky.
Yeah.
This is a podcast, nothing's legally binding. No. I'm aware of, so it's okay, I'm not holding you to
aspirational ideas to do this. If we could, I'd be delighted. Certainly it'd be interesting to see if you needed the annoying things you need to do to wholesale booze here in the UK, of having your AWRS number.
Yeah, I don't know what the equivalent for that for cigars is. Yoni, you can write and tell me, and we'll discuss this sometime later. So we've got a really nice picture, I think, of what the shop looks like, and a beautiful humidor, and the sort of things that you have on the shelves. You guys also do kind of, I think actually the stock that you have in is very tailored to all of your personalities and what you want on a shelf. But how do you go about something like store picks? Because you have done bottle-owns for Just Good Spirits, because that's something I think that's increasingly important, that not only is, drawing people into a shop so that they can make delightful selections of products, but having something that's only available in Good Spirits in Glasgow.
Yeah, we, the main question we get from visitors to Glasgow is, mostly the tourists that come in, what can we get that we can't get back home? And that's tricky because, if you're dealing with people from the US, every single state is like a separate country.
Mm-hmm. We know it too well.
Yes. So, what might go into 3 or 4 states in the US, if something says, yes, we ship to the States, but doesn't go to that state that person's from, it might go to California or New York or somewhere, but it might not go to,
Virginia. Jason is always annoyed that lots of nice things that he wants are not available. And I find that amazing about Americans, is that they are then willing to drive in what in UK terms would be an obscene distance to drive to some other shop to pick things up, especially if you're in a state-controlled situation. So like Virginia, it's a monopoly. So if the monopoly choose not to bring something in, then you either need to be willing to commit to having some really nice pen pals all around the States who will hold bottles for you, or they drive mega distances. I've seen it on our Facebook page. Somebody will say they have this in a store and they'll be like, it's only a 4-hour drive. Like, I don't know, we are so localised here that people who live on the south side of Glasgow won't come into the town to go for a drink. That's a 20-minute bus ride tops. There's not many people, I think, who are... I'm not just picking on the Southsiders, because I know some Southsiders who are listening to this who will now complain to me that I've highlighted them as a problem.
Well, I remember when we took over our West End shop, took over the old Peckhams up there, and I was speaking to a customer that came in, and he hadn't even twigged, because obviously the shop has been an off sales for a long time. So I don't think he'd even twigged there was a different name above the door. He just twigged that it felt slightly different. And I was like, oh yeah, we've got another shop in town on Bath Street. Do you know it? And he was like, oh, I don't think I've been in the city centre in 20 years.
Yeah.
And I think that's the thing. Where you've got these wee communities around Glasgow, like in the suburbs, and the West End isn't even really a suburb; it's just part of Glasgow.
A chunk, yeah.
It's just that you could walk it in half an hour, maybe 40 minutes.
I worked with a woman in the West End who, when I was working for Peckhams, she hadn't left the West End in 15 years, and so I made there was a day when we needed somebody to come work in the Merchant City here, and she was the one nominated for it, and she was horrified. And I was like, just get off the subway, it's okay. Like, nah, she was furious that we'd broken her streak of refusing to come into the city. That was just one of these, like, you thought you'd asked her to get on a raft and go to Timbuktu. Like, not, she lived next to the subway, she could get on the it was amazing.
It's incredible.
Yeah. And similarly, I think when you become so used to it, maybe that's like a flattery, that you become so ingrained into people's minds as being a permanent space. When I worked in the Merchant City branch, somebody came in looking for something, and I think I tried to send them up to you guys. I said, like, I'm sure they'll have it on Bath Street. And they're like, no, it's fine. I'll just go into your branch in Central Station, which had been closed for like 9 years by that point. It is now the Marks and Spencers. You know, like, we hadn't occupied that space. And they're like, no, I definitely. And I was like, no, you haven't been in there recently. Clearly not the train station to notice that it's now quite a big chain.
Yeah,
occupying that space.
Amazing.
So yeah, you do you pecking stuff, but what about these? So, I was asking you about the cask picks.
Yeah, so cask picks we do because of the people wanting things that they can't buy anywhere else. You know, we started doing store picks quite a long time ago. We've probably done, I don't know, 30 or 40 or more, I can't even think. Probably 4 or 5 a year, I would be my rough guess. Mm-hmm. Some years more, some years less. It just depends. I think last year we took on a sherry butt of Ardnamurchan unpeated, made with Golden Promise, which was ridiculous liquid, but it was a very, very large cask. So having, I think the biggest previous casks we'd had were maybe 200 odd bottles, maybe high 200s.
Yeah.
This was just shy of 700.
Yeah, that's a challenge.
So we kind of, that was stressful, but we did shift it in about 4 months. So we were quite pleased to sell it all in that time, and it was probably the one whiskey I wish I'd bought more of myself.
I think that's quite interesting. Ardnamurchan have done quite a few, and we are big fans of Ardnamurchan. It's funny how they seem to have cornered a market. I feel like new distilleries especially, of which Ardnamurchan are part of that kind of family, are starting to talk about little snippets of the side of the industry that we've focused really heavily on casks for a long time. I don't think the obsession and interest in what cask the whiskey has been in is going away anytime soon. But I feel like they've kind of, a few people are now looking at, okay, well, we've talked a lot about cask types. How about we go further back into the process? Let's talk about old grains. Let's talk about barley strains that we have stopped using for whatever reason. And Golden Promise obviously was a very important, both in brewing and distilling. And then the time has passed on, I guess. We've got better, higher yielding crops, or more, very topical for today, weather-resistant barleys, or those kinds of things. And Golden Promise, I think, was kind of outstripped. It's interesting to see people like Ardnamurchan making a virtue of it. And so now people are coming to the shop and saying to you, oh, we've heard about that Golden Promise stuff. Oh, a Golden Promise Ardnamurchan. Yes, I want one of those. Like, that seems wild to me that people are coming in off the street and by barley variety asking you questions. Do you think whiskey drinkers, and a lot of this has to do with, I think, the internet, but like the information is now so advanced, and Ardnamurchan are definitely powering that by having like blockchain technology where I think they tell you what colour the socks of the staff were that day when you scan the code.
It tells you the 3 people who were working the bottling line that day.
It's got their faces, faces.
Incredible.
I think maybe the information is amazing, and that's definitely changed. For me, working as a bottler and talking to you guys as stores and what people are looking for, to when I was working in a shop, when people would maybe come in with whatever this year's malt book had, or sometimes it would be Jim Murray's Whiskey Bible. People would come in and say, this got 97 points, can I have it? And then we would go out of our way to sell them something else. But people would come in and ask for it. Do you feel like that's something changing within the store? People are coming with better, more intelligent questions?
Yes and no. I think Ardnamurchan have done a great job with Golden Promise, and I think that has sparked a conversation with people because it had the liquid had a noticeable quality that other whiskies didn't have, that you could tell, that oiliness, the gloopiness that you get from Golden Promise. I think really kind of made it stand out amongst a crowd, if that makes sense. And I think that when people started focusing on that and realising that that made such a difference, it was a relatively easy thing to talk about, you know, or for consumers to get their head around. Whereas if someone had come in and saying, I've heard this whiskey uses a different type of yeast, you know, I know Loch Lomond used some Chardonnay yeast for a wee bit, and that was really fascinating to see that. And that, for a little bit, people talked about. People were asking about the Chardonnay yeast, but then that's kind of gone away as they've stopped talking about it. And I think, you know, Ardnamurchan, certainly, I think they were putting down maybe 10% of the production in Golden Promise.
Yeah, it was a good chunk,
it was a good chunk. So I think, you know, they do have liquid there, and they're very good at bottling good things. So I would expect them, I hope, to see some Golden Promise soon.
Do you think it's easier as well if you are a distillery who maybe have like a farming element? So I think about every time I've been to Kilhoman, especially when they're doing like the 100% Islay production, if you're there at that time, they're very good at telling you like, well, this barley came from that field there, and that barley field is Sassy, but this field over here we're doing Diablo. Like, I wonder if that's maybe easier as a concept because you can point it at a field, so your brain goes, oh yeah, that's... Rather than when you're in a distillery where they have brought malt in from a big maltster, it's a little bit more abstract. It's just another fact that the tour guide is reeling off to tell you, usually before we go into the room where there's a very noisy mill, and I get to judge, that's not a Yorkshire mill, so you're not a good distillery. That's my team Portuguese all the way.
Not that you're biased in any way.
Not that I'm biased in any way. No. It turns out actually some distilleries who don't have Porteous mills do also make quite good whiskey. So my theory is not flawless.
But, you know, I
think, you know, if you go to a distillery, there's a lot of stats that get thrown at you. And as a whiskey nerd, I love that because I love hearing all these stats. But I do sometimes worry that for people who are coming to Scotland and are just ticking off seeing a castle, a Highland cow, a whiskey, a haggis, that maybe that's too much information?
Yeah, I think you probably, you know, it's a bit like our tastings. We have to judge how we pitch them, and often we get it wrong. But we'll come back to that later. Yeah, but that's definitely a thing. I think giving people something to grab onto in terms of barley variety or yeast type or cask type is a really good way of kind of hooking people in. I think, you know, we spend our whole lives trying to demystify things. You know, our idea is that if you walk in and we can help you understand the product better, you can make better decisions yourself when you come to buying more whiskey. Either coming back in saying, I really love that cask type, can you show me more whiskies of that cask type, or I like the way that flavour went, or other things that give me that flavour. Yeah. You know, I really like that conversation. But if you empower people to make that, to understand better, then hopefully they will then go away and enjoy whiskey even more because they've got a better understanding of what they like, rather than going, I kind of like whiskey that tastes of, well, they all taste of whiskey.
That's my favourite bit in a tasting. When I'm always starting people off and it's like kind of, you know, the first couple of drams and people are very quiet and they don't want to make eye contact with you, and you ask a question and everyone's looking at their shoes. That there's always that one, and I like to preempt it by being like, if you put your nose in this glass and all you're smelling is whiskey, that is also okay. It means we're in a place where we've washed the glasses. That's fine. You know, like, it's totally fine to put your nose in a glass and be bewildered to it and think, I just smell whiskey. Like, and that's great, because first of all, that means you know what whiskey smells like. You haven't put it in and thought it smells like a cup of tea or beans on toast or, you know, like the train. So that, I think that's the first step. I think people get a little bit anxious at first about being not quick enough or clever enough to come up with all these lovely, kind of quite often elaborate descriptions and details of what's in a glass. And that only comes from practice, which is also great, because it just means you just have to keep trying, and that's, you know, that's a nice thing to aim for. I don't know everything. It's just that I've spent a disproportionate amount of time working on this stuff, whereas most people have, as my mum calls it, real jobs.
Yeah, that's tricky. You know, I've got, my kids are getting to that age where we're trying to get them to find some part-time work, and you know, they're both in education. My son's just started uni, and it's hard to say to them, yeah, go, you should get a job, you know, and they're like, well, like a proper job, or, and I'm like, any job's a proper job. Just, if you're working and you're earning money, that's a good thing.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter. Especially with my kind of circuitous route to where I am now,
But I think that's a good... but they see that you're going to work, you've got a successful business, you've got lots of people who depend on you. I think that in the UK, we have this funny idea about working in the alcohol trade, that it's a placeholder for something else.
It's something you do between leaving uni or during uni.
While you're at uni. And I think now I must look old enough that people don't ask me that question. But certainly when I had finished my university training and I couldn't get a legal traineeship, so I just became full-time and managed some stores. But that wasn't... When I tell people, they'll be like, why aren't you applying for jobs? And I'll be like, because I'm working 60 hours a week in retail and spending my weekends writing job applications. There's not really a lot more I can do apart from physically chaining myself to legal offices. And so for a long time, people were like, well, but you are going to do something else, aren't you? And I remember having this conversation with especially my parents and being like, no, I really like this. This is way more interesting than I had initially thought it was, and it occupies my space in a nice way. And my mum was really like, but if you work with drink all the time, then you'll just be drinking. I know a lot of the podcast listeners think all we do is drink, but it's not true. I spend a lot of time with spreadsheets, which I absolutely despise. But I think that kind of like, this is a serious trade. Your job is, when somebody comes into good spirits, as a professional, and you are a professional doing it, is to help them understand this quite complicated stuff. A bit like when you go to make big purchases on, I don't know, like a car or a house, you're hoping that the person that's telling you that is not just reading some spiel. They genuinely know this will fit your needs. This is a good suggestion to go with.
Oh, very much so. And, as a professional...
You did air quotes there, but I'm not letting you have that. You are a professional.
As a professional. I think, you kind of cross that line when you start using you understand and are comfortable with the use of a spittoon.
Oh, goodness. I will never be comfortable with the use of a spittoon. It just feels so unnatural to me. But the shop that you're talking about, that your most recent in the portfolio, I used to work in that shop when it was a Peckham's and it was a wine shop, and the wine buyer worked in there, and he was fully capable of holding a conversation with you and then would just, out the corner of his mouth, very elegantly spit into a spittoon which felt like 4 metres away, and not a single drop of it would go anywhere. I'm not that good. I feel very self-conscious about it. I also joke about them when I'm at festivals and stuff. I'm like, you don't have to finish the dram. You can absolutely use these spittoons. It's fine. In Glasgow, we call them table decorations because they come out, they sit on the table and then they go back again, because I feel like we're not very good at using them here.
I think if I'm at a festival, I tend not to spit, but I often won't finish what's in my glass.
Yeah.
And I think that's a kind of happy medium between, you're there to enjoy yourself as well as, maybe learn a little bit. But I think these days you go to a festival and you try very little because you spend most of the time chatting to people that you've not seen in a long time.
Yeah. Do you think that's a spirits thing? Because I think when I was doing a lot more wine things, spittoons were totally normal. Everybody used it. It wasn't even a question, and nobody looked at you weirdly. You're like, oh yes, there's a spittoon. But I think in the spirits world, we're a bit more precious about the liquid and are less likely to use them. I think I'm like you. I would drink less and probably pour out more than a spittoon, but I would use it. I'm not.
I think the culture's different between the wine trade and the spirits trade. For me, I kind of feel that the wine trade starts in a different place, whereas the spirit trade tends to start with quite a lot of people, us excluded, start out in the kind of bar scene, which is a very different culture and involves a very different kind of way of approaching alcohol.
Yeah, I can't keep up with bar people. I've learned.
Yeah, that's definitely a thing.
But I think whiskey festivals are definitely an interesting thing. I think maybe we should have a separate episode where we talk about whiskey festivals and maybe a kind of one-on-one of how to, if it's your first time. I see a lot of people who get into a whiskey festival, and I'm talking about the UK ones, and they tend to be, you've paid your money, you get a glass, probably some sort of token, a bottle of water, and then it's like a day at the races, off you go. And I think people get giddy. Like Glasgow Whisky Festival here is a good example. There's a lot of tables. It's spread out over a bunch of rooms, so you are doing a bit of walking, but there's a lot to choose from. And how do you even know where to start? Like maybe your obvious choice is going to things like start off safe. Start with maybe go to a stand where it's a brand or a bottler that you know, and check out some new stuff from them because you sort of know what they're at. Let's see what they've got. Or I guess maybe because I'm a bit more carefree about it, I use it as like a potluck. I'll just go. I've never seen this before. What is it? Can I try it?
That's a good idea. I think there's really good things you can do at a festival, and I think there is frustration. I feel in that you've only got so many units you can spare.
Yeah.
And if you turn up at a table that's quiet, and there's an expectation, say, from the person behind it who kind of wants you to show them the full range. You know, they're probably the person behind the counter is probably sick of people coming out going, "I want your most expensive. I want your oldest," because that's just...
There's definitely a podcast episode in Whiskey Stories from Festivals.
That's just frustrating.
People just walking around with their glasses out. The one that really winds me up is people who have their glasses on a lanyard and don't even unclip it. So you're kind of pouring it down like right by their faces, right in your face as you're pouring the whiskey out. I don't know why that gives me the ick, but it really... Just unclip the glass. Hold your glass out like that's a real pet peeve of mine.
I can imagine. But also you don't want to be doing... If someone's got 7 whiskies, you shouldn't be trying all 7.
You shouldn't expect to be trying all 7.
No, especially if you've got kind of an entry point. You're like, okay, that's your kind of basic one. Unless if you know the brand, you should be saying, well, what's interesting? You know, what have you got that I've maybe not seen before or not tried?
Yeah.
You know, I've tried the entry point, which might be a good place to warm up, to remind yourself, but, you know, have a sip and pour the rest out. Don't get stuck in. You know.
Yeah, there's definitely... we did a festival that we were next to Springbank, who, bless them, had the new local barley at that time out.
Okay.
And it was on the table. It wasn't even an under the table jam. So the queue, it was like... They were doing good trade all day, and we were kind of next to them being like... We were also very busy, in my defence, but just it was like a swarm straight into them, and I thought, oh, God, that's a...
And I think that breeds poor behaviour from people because they've been standing in the queue for so long, they just shove their arm out and don't necessarily want to converse, whereas the person behind the counter kind of feels their job is to tell you about the brand and explain what the whiskies are and talk about different things, you know, the cask types or where you can buy it and how much it costs and why you should buy it. And you should definitely buy a bottle of this on your way out.
I feel like, and I don't have any science to this, but I do feel like off the festivals, I think people are not so much making purchases on the day. I think people are making notes and then coming back and buying later. I've spoken to quite a few people who I've seen at festivals and have come to our table and we've poured for them. And then they've said, oh yeah, I went and bought that the next day. Or I wonder if that's maybe a change. Maybe people are slightly more aware of shopping under the influence. I'm not sure where I'm going with this in terms of like solid. Do you feel like 1 week after Glasgow Whisky Festival people have come in with a shopping list? I don't think it's quite as formed as that, but I do feel like people are a bit more conscious in their purchasing patterns.
Yeah, I think so. I think there is definitely a fear of purchasing a bottle, especially after the festival, and you might have had several drinks, and going to the pub afterwards because that's where because you feel invulnerable at that point until you get halfway through your first pint and realise that it was a mistake. But at that point, you're very susceptible to leaving it. The bottles you bought in the taxi or on the bus or on the train or in the pub or in the restaurant or anywhere that you've been.
Yeah, absolutely. So, maybe we should offer to tie them to people just to really... Like, you know, like you get balloons on a string around your wrist. We'll, like, tie the carrier bag on someone's wrist for security.
What we should say is just hand out a flyer. It's outside Hampden for the next festival saying, if you're passing through Glasgow and don't trust yourself because you're going out, just leave the bottles with us and we can...
a creche.
Yeah, we'll look after them and we won't open any.
Promise not to take a sip. Unless you leave it more than a week, then all bets are off. I'll do what I like.
Game's a bogey.
Okay, Glasgow Whisky Festival's coming up. I'll have a little think about that. I feel like Jason at this point in an interview would have like a nice let's get out of here. He has one question, and as you are a regular podcast listener, you're well aware of this. So I've decided to trip you up a bit because I want to do a few of these interviews, providing my esteemed colleagues allow me back. I want to speak to different people who are public-facing single cask nation merchants that are not us, so shops, retailers, bars, that kind of thing. So you are my guinea pig. Mm-hmm. So I have come up with 5 moderately quick fire questions.
Okay.
So here we go. Right. Question number 1: if the shop was a whiskey, what would it be?
It'd have to be Ardnamurchan.
Okay.
So relatively new, but doing great things.
That's good. That's like a nice line that you'd give on Blind Date. Surprise, surprise. Okay, Ardnamurchan, I'll take that. Like I said, we are big fans of them, so that's great. What is your personal desert island dram?
Oh, right. We did a store pick several years ago of a 28-year-old Bunnahabhain, which was utterly delicious. It was sitting about 40.1 or 40.41% alcohol. It was natural cask strength. It was just ridiculous fruit juice. I came across it down at David Stark, who is, I think, a friend of the podcast.
He is.
Yeah, a good friend of the podcast. He doesn't live anywhere near Glasgow, but he treats us as his local shop, which is quite nice.
That's nice.
So he pops in regularly.
It's a long walk.
It's a long walk. But he pops in and he picks up the odd thing. But I remember going down to his birthday tasting. I think it was celebrating 10 years of creative whiskey. And he did this ridiculous flight of whiskies for a tasting. But during the day we were down visiting his new offices and he'd poured out some cask samples. He had this table that was just full of cask samples, bottles full of things. There was maybe 30 bottles, and all his importers and folk were walking around. I hear everyone gasping and oohing and ahhing over this one whiskey, and I was thinking, right, okay, I should really go and try some of these. So I went around and tried some, and this Bunnahabhain was so delicious, just fruit juice. It was like just juice, yeah, you know what I mean.
Yeah, I do.
Yeah.
I love a tropical Bunnahabhain.
And we, about a week later, I kept thinking about the whiskey, and I phoned up or emailed David and said, that Bunnahabhain, is it available? And he'd said yes. And then when he told me the price, I almost bit his arm off. So, and it meant that we could sell it for something like just under £80 a bottle. There's only 100 odd bottles out of the cask, and at the time it was the most expensive thing we'd ever bottled, so we were terrified about the price. At the time the Bunnahabhain 25 was retailing at £150.
Those are recent prices.
Yes. So at ours at 80, we were like, that's the most thing. That's way higher than our standard price that we'd normally be selling things in the shops. So we were very trepidatious of the pricing of that, and we sold it in a week, which was really annoying because it was one of these. Not that I was annoyed at selling it, but it meant that we got the price so wrong. But we'd made our margins.
It makes people come back, right?
Yeah.
People want to be like, do you have that thing that you bottled? Can we have more of that? And then you get to say, no.
Yeah.
It's a one cask opportunity.
Yeah, we bottled a 6-year-old Lefroy several years ago, again from David, and they sent us some samples, and we hadn't got around to tasting it. And we tasted it about 2 weeks after we'd got the samples, and we just were like, this is the most amazing Lefroy. We have to have it, right? We've messaged him, can we get this Lefroy? He's like, we've just re-racked that into virgin oak. And we're like, quick, take it out.
Pull it out.
And if anything, it was even better, just with this kind of little bit of sweetness on the finish,
That's very much of the Mark Watt school of resting whiskey.
Yeah.
That's a dangerous path to go down. I know he's probably also listening to me say that. He'll agree.
But it was just glorious, and we still get people asking for that dram. I tried this Lefroy you did. Have you got any more? No, that was 8 years ago.
That is the magic of single cask. I think the magic and the curse.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's good. Desert Island Dram is Bunnahabhain. I'll let you have that. I approve. Question number 3. What do you think is what do you personally think is the most underrated region or distillery?
Well, I think we've all got favourite distilleries, and mine. I've got a distillery that's close to my heart for no reason other than I had a good example of it once, and
which is definitely how they get us.
I know, and I've had many other examples which have not been as exciting, but I still have a soft, I feel excited when I see it. But I love a Glenelgan.
This is so good. Nobody's ever come on this podcast and said Glenelgan. I like that we're uniting the pockets of the whiskey world. So if you're wanting to form some sort of Glenelgan fan club, you come right into the podcast and I'll hook you all up together.
Hook us all up together.
We'll make badges.
Yeah, I think it all started with a 16-year-old from the special releases many years ago when I worked in Oddbins. I picked one up And it was delicious. And ever since then, I've been looking out for Glenelgans.
Oh, this is a good merchandising point because we have a 17-year-old Glenelgan that's currently sat in the shop.
And it is utterly delicious.
And I promise you, I didn't tell him you had to say that as an answer to the question. That's genuinely because also within Good Spirits there is another local legend, Roddy, who I feel like everybody on the internet knows. But Roddy is is he the founder of the Royal Brackler fan club?
There's 3 members, and the 3 members were good pals who started the club together.
Okay.
So they were drinking in the pot still and came across a bottle of Royal Brackler that had an unusual herbal note that they were so intrigued by that they kept going back and finished the bottle. And then they went out on a quest to try and find more of the Royal Bracklers that had this herbal note. Typically Royal Brackler has a kind of toffee penny, like a toffee.
Yeah, I wouldn't have thought of it as herbal at all.
And a touch of hairspray often. Those are the kind of 2 kind of classic notes we get from Royal Brackler. But these herbal notes apparently came from certain bottlings, over a small period of time. That when I think DCL, when the merger of when Diageo was created with the merger of Grand Metropolitan and Guinness and things, through the Competition and Mergers Commission, they had to sell off some of their distilleries.
Yeah.
So they sold off a chunk of distilleries to Bacardi. And Royal Brackler was one of them. And they kind of didn't really know what to do with the whiskies or distilleries. So I think the whiskies that were bottled were quite variable, so variable quality and not at that time, and certainly some of the Royal Bracklers in that period are the ones that have that herbal note. Okay,
well, that's 2 excellent niche distilleries. I'll feel like we'll slip Roddy's club in there, but if you want to help Matthew get to more than a grand membership of 3, and I feel like we should be able to achieve that.
It should be easily done because everyone likes most whiskies more than Royal Brackler.
Okay, quick question number 4. If you were to start your whiskey journey today of recording in 2025, and you've got no prior knowledge of whiskey and you're walking into Good Spirits, where would you like to be guided to? If you had a lovely young fresh-faced whiskey drinker come into the shop, where would you start them off?
I would probably start people off with something like Arran 10-year-old or Deanston 12-year-old. I think they offer a really nice place to start in terms of quality and offering a different side of whiskey,
And it's buildable too. I think both those distilleries have quite a lot that they can offer you once you've got your head around. Arran 10 is definitely solidly one of the ones that I always start people with because I think it's delicious.
Bunnahabhain 12 is those are the 3 I normally start with. Just going right. There's a bit of sherry, there's a bit of coastal, there's a bit of malt. Deanston, you get the lovely malty, gristly notes coming through.
So you're not throwing anyone in at the deep end with some Octomores?
No.
It's a definite sink or swim. What if you did that? I don't know about you, but I've often found that people have this very built-up perception of what peat is, and actually, if you start somebody with something like a peated Ardnamurchan, I poured at the weekend, and I asked the group that I was hosting for, I said, so anyone here who doesn't like peat? And one lady put her hand up and said, I don't like peat. So I was like, okay, well, that's fair enough. Give it to your husband next to you. Because he was like, I really like it. And I was like, well, this seems like a good match. You 2 can trade drams. So she didn't like, we had a peated Ardnamurchan. She said she wasn't sure about that. She wasn't sure but didn't hate it. Mm-hmm. And then at the end I poured our Williamson and she was like, this is magical. And I was like, well, this is Lafroig. And she was like, yeah, I know, but it just hit the spot. And I was like, there you go, now you're into peat. You've unlocked it. Madness lies from here on in. So
I think you just need that gateway, don't you? You need that gateway whiskey or the flavour, the thing that makes it click in your head. I think that was certainly something I found when I was in my first journey and through booze, learning about wine. And I remember people kept talking about Barolo as being this amazing thing, and I tried a couple and was like, no, I don't understand this. And then I tried one that had the classic notes of tar and roses and those things. And I'm like, there it is.
Yeah, and then, once you've unlocked the core, and then also that makes you want more of it, I think, too.
But it also makes it easier to understand the other examples I'd had. So when I went back and tried the wines that hadn't quite worked for me before, I could kind of see it now. Because I could put it in. I could fit it in my brain how it worked.
Because we're not drinking for fun. It's only for education.
Only for education. It's about sharing joy and bringing joy to people.
Yeah, that is very yes. That's my argument all the time about why I stay in this industry. Okay, my final moderately paced question, number 5, was: what do you think the most missed bottle in the shop is? If there was one thing you could bring back from any point in time and have it back on the shelf.
Oh, probably that 28-year-old Bunnahabhain. That would be great. Or, would you say something like Old Paltney 17 or, or, or even like the old Anok 16.
Oh, that's a great dram.
When it was 46%. And
I was really delighted they brought that back as part of their anniversary series a few years ago. Jason and I went up to the distillery and we had it, and that was like revisiting an old friend. That was really a lovely dram to finish we did a tour with Golden Brew, so that was a lovely way to kind of finish the afternoon.
There's some special whiskies there, and they're not flashy, they're not showy, they're just...
No, they don't have to be. That's why I think this is if I may say so myself, a potentially interesting question, because the obvious initial response is to be like, let's go at Brewer at original pricing on the shelf. That's not necessarily the most accessible or thing that you would find yourself returning to. I say that, if I could afford Brewer every day of the week, I probably would be drinking it. That's because it's semi-magical liquid.
It is semi-magical liquid, yeah.
Okay, I feel like those were... I don't want to, I'm not stretching the point too hard. It's always fun to hear what people would like to have back. Just because I think it also gives us a context of what we've moved from, like what brands are focusing on instead of that thing that you really hang on to.
Yeah, very much so, yeah.
Well, I think it seems like a good place to wrap it up. Thank you very much for coming to join me on the podcast.
Oh, it was great. I love the fact we could fit this all in a tight 30.
It's a very tight spot on checks notes, 34 and 57 seconds, so that's good.
Excellent.
Thanks, Matthew.
It was amazing.
Bye.
Cheers.
So I'd like to thank Matthew for his time and talking to me. And I also would like to thank Joshua for editing the 40 minutes of unusable rubbish Matthew and I recorded at the beginning of the interview. Good thing is, dear listeners of the podcast, is you don't have to listen to that. Now, that's great because that's saved you 40 minutes. It's also saved us an inordinate amount of money because we trash talked a lot of people who would come after us with big lawyers' letters. So thank you, Joshua, for taking care of that. That's very kind of you. I hope you enjoyed listening.
I'm going to hold it over your head.
Yeah, well, that's the other thing. It is sort of on wax, but it's on wax in space, so it could come back and bite me in the ass at any time. But yes, thank you very much. Take care of that. I hope you enjoyed listening to me and Matthew having a chat. I had a ton of fun.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. No, it was.
I'm glad we got him on here, right? We've been friends with Matthew for a long, long time, and bumping into him different points in Glasgow, like to finally get him to finally get a chance to listen to him talking about his endeavors, his passion, his enthusiasm. Like he's a good lad. He's a good whiskey lad. And so thank you to you, Jess, for making the time, and thanks to Matthew for joining us as well.
Yeah. I think back to, it was probably my first purchase at Good Spirits Company, and Matthew had helped me out. And, you go in there and he's, obviously they've got a lovely whiskey wall. And so he's showing me around, and we get over to, the bees. I can't remember if it was alphabetical or if it was, by region, but we get over to where there's an Isla Whiskies, and there was a Bowmore, and it was a single malts of Scotland bottling.
Nice.
And it was an 80s bottling. And he said, and I looked at this one, and it was, 80s Bowmore. And he said, oh, you're not going to want that. It's got FWP all over it. And I was like, that's exactly why I want this. And I purchased that one immediately. And I think I may have gotten like an Aaron at the same time. But I loved, he really... He looks after his customers. He was like, he probably took a guess that most people aren't going to want the FWP. So he looks after his customers like that, but which I quite liked. But that warning was like, oh, perfect. I'm going to take this bottle. I wish I had bought two, because that was an excellent Excellent whiskey.
Well, he definitely knows how to get people to open their wallets, because he messaged me the other weekend with a photograph of a newly delivered from Adelphi bottle of Westland, which I had a little heads up from Anna that was coming our way.
Ooh.
But I hadn't got as far as messaging the guys in the shop to see if they were getting it. And he just sent me a photograph, and my immediate response was yes. And then after a minute or two, I thought I should probably ask him how much that is instead of just saying yes. Luckily, it was very reasonable. So go fill your boots. I rescued mine from the shop. So whatever's left in the shop is for your taking, Glasgow. Go and get it. It's delicious. Mine is safely stashed away and ready to be opened. It's in a queue. I'm going to queue jump it. It's great. I tried it at Glasgow's Whiskey Festival, funnily enough, which is where I was this weekend. Oh, that was good. I tell you, my Monday brain today is working. Like, this is. Oh.
And you're bringing us out the interview. You're transitioning to your own next segment of the podcast. Like you said it to open today. You are taking over. This is great. We're just going to kick our feet up, pour cups of tea.
Yeah.
We're now just living in Jessica Rabbit Guillermo Lomas' podcast.
I have had somebody ask me where the name comes from, and I'm like, well, you'll have to go back many episodes to get those two tangential references, which are now my name. So that's
Guillermo is such a good addition.
It's a great addition.
So, how is it that your brain is working on a Monday after Glasgow's Whiskey Fest, which I'm sure was loaded with a ton of cast strength whiskeys in your mouth?
No, I actually, and this is a really sad, I don't know, if you ask ambassadors increasingly, I don't really drink that much during the festival. I get to the Bon Accord at the end, and I was telling everybody, because I get grumpy in session 2, but it was okay, because dear friend of mine, and also a regular listener of the podcast, Flo, brought me a box of Tantrum donuts. So that cheered me up significantly.
Now,
but
are they legit
2,
called Tantrum donuts? Or
it's a brand. They're very famous in
Tantrum.
Glasgow. Tantrum donuts are the OG delicious bestest of donuts.
Wow, well done.
Great. So yeah, Flo absolutely played to his strengths. Well done, and was handsomely rewarded. And then, so I was telling everybody when I finish, what I'd really like is for a little 15 minutes in the pub where I can sit down and have one pint. There'll be silence, and I mean absolute silence. And then once I've had the pint, I'll be okay again. Obviously, that's not what happens at the end of whiskey festivals, as everybody knows. Everyone goes back into the pub. Thomas had fully stocked the bar. He did a great job in the Bon. Everybody was behind the bar. He'd even roped his wife Inga in. And she's honestly, she's a delight. And she's also one of the most glamorous people you've ever seen behind the bar. And that was great. Everyone was in, pints were flowing. And then they bring up all the drams that are donated at the end of the festival. So I left some of our single cast nations for the volunteers to have a drink. Because this festival is run using the power of people who volunteer. So it's nice to have something to reward them. We'll be honest, the main thing I wanted out that pub after I'd had my one drink, and I was quite thirsty, so a fridge cigarette in the form of a Diet Coke. The thing I was really waiting for was the plate of homemade sausage rolls. I don't know why I'm telling you two this, but I'm telling everybody else who's listening to this. I don't even know if there were vegetarian options. They do what I call, and I mean it with the kindest of sentiment, a great funeral tea. So there's lots of sandwiches, there were some pakoras, but these sausage rolls, and the tray was in front of me, and I was just like,
funeral tea? I don't know what funeral tea is.
It's like maybe that's a UK or even a Scottish thing, like a wake of a funeral afterwards. Everybody, there's always little triangle sandwiches, quiches, like little finger food buffet.
Oh, okay.
I know it as a funeral tea. Yeah. Are you backing me on this, Jason? Would you?
100%. Yeah, I know.
Yeah. Okay.
I've had a few of those in my day.
Yeah. Okay.
Oh, before I get totally deep into the weeds of a delightful sausage roll in the Bon Accord, I should probably tell you about some of the whiskey, shouldn't I? Well, the good news is this is a short report, listeners, and Matthew, who's already put me on 5 times speed by this point. As usual, we were absolutely rammed. I at one point had to beg some lovely people to let me leave the table to go to the toilet, because I've been trying to do that for about 25 minutes. But that's a delight. I am always thrilled to have people come to our table. I had a whole bunch of people who make a point of coming to us first.
Wow. That's great.
Luckily, we didn't have a repeat of 2024. 4. And I wonder if that's because Jason wasn't there with his good old heavy-handed paws, but we did actually make it through each session just with enough liquid. So that's good. Last year, if you remember rightly, we ran out an hour before each session ended. Wow. So that was good. It was lovely to meet people coming over to see the new branding. Very excited to see that. See some lovely stuff. I ran a little Instagram competition where if you could tell me what my earrings were, I had a secret under the table dram for you.
Oh boy.
My earrings were 10x tea cakes, the other famous product out of Uddingston. And if you could tell me that, then I gave you a little secret dram from underneath. Oh, and if you didn't spot my earrings, then you don't know what you're missing, so that's fine. So we had a selection from our new release, and we had a couple of older bottles I just really wanted to have on the table and drink because they're great. And we had a ton of fun. I met people from all over the place. I'm always delighted to find lovely folk that fly in from the 4 corners of the globe to come and visit us and make a point of saying, it's really nice to meet you. It's really nice to see people manage to make it in from, Edinburgh. The far, far reaches of Edinburgh, very far away.
Scottish mindset.
That's for the international audience. That's a joke that people in Scotland won't cross the side of the country on a 40-minute train journey to see each other. So that was lovely. I had a good friend of mine, his dad, who I've never met before, came with a bunch of pals and came up and sort of said, "Are you Jess? And is that Chris?" And he's like, "Who's asking?" And he said, "Oh, my son's told me I have to come and drink your whiskies." And then we talked for a little bit longer, and then he said, "So I should probably tell you who my son is." And we were like, "Yeah, that would help, thanks." And it was, of course, the lovely Stuart Baxter's dad. Stuart Baxter, the reason I'm telling this story is the global ambassador for In the House, and therefore is responsible for Jason's favourite distillery, Balmenic. So,
which leads me to my question, which is last year I felt like Balmenic was really king of the table. Did you have a whiskey that seemed to be the crowd pleaser on the day, or even the title split between a couple?
We had the Longmorn 16 on the table, and at one point we were hiding it. Because in session number 1, the whole bottle was pretty much done in the first hour.
Wow.
So
that sounds familiar.
There were 2 other Longmorns in the room, but I had good feedback from everybody who weren't just kissing my bum, telling me that ours was our favourite. Somebody brought me back another one, who I'll not name because I'm very kind, and I would say that I thought ours was much better.
Nice one. Nice one. Nice to end.
Always good to know. So we did great change with those. We had a bunch of people really enjoying the Bunnahabhain. We had a lot of discourse about whether or not we thought Bunnahabhain is better as peated or unpeated. I am team peated Bunnahabhain. Chris is team unpeated. So that's always fun to have behind the table. It's like the 6th of December birthday people ganging up together.
Unpeated all the way.
Yeah, Joshua just pointed at himself.
Yeah,
and I'm definitely.
That's a birthday alliance thing, clearly.
Yeah,
it's a birthday thing.
End of June, peated.
Whereas team end of June, no better. We had a few people come to pass on their regards to you two, saying that they are also podcast listeners, which was nice. And people that have met you in various places around the world. I made some new friends from Chicago. Who were lovely and a delight to chat to. They were the people that I had to abandon eventually to run away to the loo. But they were, it was very nice to meet them. And of course, discuss people like dramas. I love how the whiskey world is small, right? I am in Glasgow, and I'm talking to some people who are from Chicago, and we're discussing dramas and Charlie and just, but in Glasgow. That was really funny to me. A bit like meeting people at Jack Rose and talking about places in Yorkshire also tickles me. So that's the thing I really enjoy. Glasgow Festival is definitely, I have been pretty honest over the years, one of the tougher festivals. I think as a city, we know how to party. So that's fun. But Julie, Mark and Thomas organize honestly one of the most flawlessly executed festivals. I bang on about this all the time. Julie has a goodie bag on the table of things to help get you through. There's always some sweets and pens, stuff for you to wrap up your stock at the end. There's a sausage roll on the bon if that's your gig. Also, the only thing that I've ever known, I think Julie is the only person who's ever put it on as part of a festival. There's a masseuse. Actually, that's wrong. There's 3 masseuses. And so in that little hour's gap between the 2 sessions, when everybody leaves, exhibitors get to go upstairs where we can get a bit of scran and a sit down. But there are 3 women doing massages, and they are incredible. They are the unsung heroes of Glasgow Whisky Festival. So any festival I've ever been to, and people are like, give us your feedback, what could we do? I'm like, massage in between the 2 sessions. That's what I want. I want a barista made coffee, and I want a massage. So
amazing.
Would you trade in the massage for 1 3-hour session instead of 2 4-hour sessions?
That's tough going. I mean, like, I'd sacrifice eating to have a massage.
That's always
the queue to get the massage.
Are the ones who skip the food and go straight to the massage line.
Yes, when we got upstairs, Chris immediately vanished. And I said to Dor, did he tell you where he was going? And Dor was like, no. I was like, he's in the massage queue. Sure enough, when I ran around the corner, there he was in the queue. So
that was for exhibitors only, the massage?
It is not for the public. No, sir.
Yeah.
You have to go upstairs far away with your wristband away from the general public.
Okay.
Oh, no. It's an absolute delight.
Very nice.
Thoroughly recommend. Nice. So if you are a festival organizer listening to this and you want me to pour your festival, I require a 15-minute massage. That's the only prerequisite to this whole. That's not quite true.
Noted.
That's not quite true, but it's pretty hard sell for me. So it was lovely, and it, like I say, they are so good at organizing. It's like the organizers are making sure there's water all the time. I have to give a big shout out to my mate Ian Petrie, who I think, according to his watch, he walked something insane like 11 miles, just walking backwards and forwards, filling up everybody's water, taking it very seriously. There's a crew whose job are to come around and ask you, do you want tea or coffee? And that's all they do all day. It's lovely.
That's a good place. Good place. Yeah. Long may it continue. I would like to get back some year. Now that Jess has been to Premier Drams, maybe I'll get back to Glasgow's Whisky Festival.
At least you and I have done it twice. Joshua here has never managed it. He's got as far as nearly the front door. That's it.
Then I caught COVID. Yeah, hopefully I'd like to get there and maybe not catch COVID.
Who knows? Yeah. So, I think people would be delighted to see you turn up. That would mean I could go around and do the drinking, because the trouble is with having such a popular stand, and this is a first world complaint, listeners, I actually got to try very little liquid. So the liquid I did try was people either generously donating it and bringing it to the table, or I sort of shot out and came back. So there are 3 rooms at the festival. I never made it out of our room, with the exception of going to the loo. So there's a whole other equally sized room on the other side of the hallway from us. And I never got that. Where people like SMWS have a really big stand down at the bottom. There are a few other bottlers that I wanted to go and say hi to and try their liquid, and never got to them. We had a pretty good crowd in our room while we had tons of good friends across the way. We had the Adelphi Arden American boys. So there was Connell, Carl, and Callum, too many C's, all together across the road for us to pull faces at. Just next to them was Kate with the Elixir stand. And sort of 2 stands up was my pals, Rachel and George, with their fragrant drops. And then Paul and Marcos with Brave New Spirits.
Oh, nice.
Andrew and Chris were with Little Brown Dog on the same side as us, but further up. And they were going around with, this seemed to be the year of temporary tattoos. I'm excited.
I saw pictures of that with their little dog tattoos. Yeah, that was great.
I stood still long enough that Ali branded me, so I had a tattoo. But I think Craig up at the top was doing them too for Decadent Drinks. I think they had the little whiskey geeks you could get as tattoos as well. Somewhere deep within the recesses of this festival was, of course, the lovely Dr. Matt with his whiskey games. He came by to say hi, and then we never saw each other again. He was hiding somewhere in one of the rooms that's not our room. So there was lots of friends there, and it was really nice to see people.
2 things. Firstly, hello to Dr. Matt.
Of course.
Thing number 1. Thing number 2, I think next year's Glasgow Whisky Fest, instead of temporary tattoos, I think we should hire an actual
real
tattoo
tattoos.
artist. Real tattoos. Yeah.
Really test the loyalty of our fans.
Yeah, right?
Okay, well, maybe you could be the one in charge of the tattoo gun, because I've got zero artistic skills. I wouldn't trust myself with a
Did you say
Sharpie.
squirrels?
Squirrels?
You've got no artistic squirels?
Oh, that's the end of my brain. Has powered down. Back in my
Having
ball.
such a good Monday until that point.
Well, Joshua is going to tattoo squirrels on people, so that's we've
exactly.
let the secret out now.
All right, we better get out of here and let Matthew get back to work. His brain is fried at 2.5 times.
Yeah. All right. Well, we didn't say it before, but I did see pictures from Glasgow's Whiskey Fest, and so I know we need to say this. Huge thanks to Christopher Sweet Scott Hallstrom and to Dor as well for helping you at the festival.
Yeah,
what's Dor's last name?
Ayalon.
Again? What is it?
Ayalon.
Okay. Thank you, Dor. I'm not going to try his last name again, but thank you, Dor.
he's an absolute trooper, a man who has a real job, not in the industry, but does this out of the love of talking whiskey to people and being an all-around superstar and helping me and being very patient as I get Grampy setting up the stand and then unleashing the madness of a whiskey festival on him. He's a gem. He's a gem.
Yeah.
Cheers, Dor. Cheers, Chris.
Well, huge thanks to them and to Matthew again, to you, Jess, of course, for both interviewing and for, Glasgow's Whiskey Fest and fighting the good fight, pouring the good liquid. And
Indeed.
To the listeners, send in your questions, please, as always, info@singlecastnation.com. This episode is not on YouTube for the visual experience. But you can listen to it from an audio experience. Maybe you're doing that right now. And if you are and you've not done it already, you can subscribe to our YouTube channel. If you are listening on audio and you've not done it already, you can subscribe to this podcast on Apple, Spotify, Google Play, I don't know, whatever the fuck else. But, a number of different podcast
all of the places.
Devices, all the places. Please do. And until next week, all we can say is thank you as always and cheers.
Cheers.
Cheers.